assholes! Assholes! You're all assholes, every one of you. Your lives don't work. And you're assholes because you sit here and pretend they do. Well, this weekend, we're going to show you how that shit has gotten you exactly nowhere. For the next 48 hours, you're going to come face to face with the only problem you got. Yourself. If you think that problem's going to disappear, well, then you are bigger assholes than I think you are. What will disappear is your belief in yourself as a problem. Because believing, and get this, people, get this, believing is shit. Being is where it's at. It's what this weekend is all about. Finding out that you're where it's at. You. Nobody else. Finding out that what you are, all you assholes, is perfect.
All right, guys, that was an excerpt from the movie Semi-Tough. Welcome to episode 149 of the Scottish Liberty Podcast. I was recently on my friend Pete Quinones' show, Free Man Beyond the Wall. And let's just say we lent a critical eye to the self-help industry. As most of you know, I'm a therapist. I'm adjacent to the industry. But I think it would be reasonable to say I have my fair share of criticisms of it. The problem I have with almost all self-help stuff is it's very much orientated around conceptually defining reality and see things through this prism and that prism, and if you just look at it this way, and they build frameworks to look at things through, and people go, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. But then they go home and their emotions bounce up and down as the day goes by, their sense of effectiveness wavers up and down, and with that, their commitment to whatever they committed to, the memories of those powerful aha moments lose their shine, and everything defaults back to more or less the same. Find out what else I hate about it right now.
Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Free Man Beyond the Wall podcast. This is your host, Pete Quinones. I invited Antony Sammeroff to return to the show. Antony is a therapist by trade, and he has a lot of problems with those books that you see in airport bookstores and the seminars that go on. And he's going to try to expose exactly what's wrong with it. And then he's going to offer his own solutions, and I may offer a couple of my own ways that I've worked through things or helped other people work through things. And I jumped at the opportunity to do this because I've never done an episode like this before. There's going to be enough humor and enough sarcasm. I think everybody's going to enjoy it, but I think there's going to be a little bit of information in here for everyone. So without any further delay, here is Antony Sammeroff. Antony, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I'm ready to crush it. I'm ready to take massive action. Are you? Are you ready to be the best version of yourself?
This is like deja vu all over again.
Yeah, I mean, I must have heard those vacuous feel-good catchphrases somewhere before. Somehow seems familiar.
Well, we do want to talk about the self-help industry, and I know that you want to address some things about it. But I hung out with you in New York. I think you're one of the most interesting persons I've ever met.
Oh.
So why don't you talk? I mean, do you feel comfortable talking about what you do for a living?
Oh yeah, of course I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I am actually a therapist, so I'm like deeply interested. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with people wanting to help themselves. I think that people wanting to help themselves is great. And if you can help other people help themselves, even so much the better. It's not help that I have a problem with, least of all self-help. I mean, now that you got me talking, I can probably talk forever. I think, if anything, to some degree, when it comes to personal development, libertarian audience should be an audience that's interested in this kind of stuff, because libertarianism is, to a degree, about personal autonomy, personal freedom, freedom in our own lives. Of course, most of the stuff that affects our freedom, to a large degree, at least in a free country, is our internal stuff. So when I'm coming on here to discuss with you the self-help industry and maybe throw some stones at it, I just want to be clear, I'm not against people trying to improve their lives.
I'll just give you like a quick anecdote from something that happened to me 20 years ago. The company I was working for and everything, they had one of, they wanted to get everybody motivated. So everyone knows who Tony Robbins is. They didn't bring him in, but they brought one of his, he has all these underlings, these mini Tony Robbins that that he's trained and sends out and everything. And basically what I got from this guy is, in order to be a success in life, you have to be completely positive and energetic all the time. And immediately the first question I wanted to ask is, I know a bunch of successful people. I mean, I'm talking about wealth, power, and they're not like this. So,
right.
What are you talking about?
Right. Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that is one of the things that I really despise about the industry. It builds up this larger than life image, this like, woo, grab life by the balls, so positive. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of these people are secretly depressed or have gone through incredible amounts of depression or anxiety, or at least the people who try to emulate it are, and it's giving really unrealistic expectations to a lot of people who are in a bad place. What if they don't feel woo all the time? What if they wake up in the morning feeling like crap and it's pretty hard just to get a couple of hours work done or tidy their room, or they're so racked with anxiety that they've never, in their 30s and they've never had sex and they would find it difficult to even talk to a girl? Like, are they meant to feel woo positive? I mean, surely feeling positive is a result. It's not necessarily an originating factor, although, it's so complicated because you can't talk about these things without maybe generalizing in a way that will sound like that you're opposed to something that's actually quite good, because obviously with everything, there may actually be a good place for positive thinking as well, in a wider toolbox. But you've touched on so many of things that are in the center of the bullseye for me. This cloning of coaches, it's really interesting with the Tony Robbins thing, because people are paying like thousands of dollars to go to stadiums to see Tony Robbins speak. I mean, when he was in London last year, he was at a huge venue and people were paying hundreds to go and see them. Now, what happens is he's going to come up and he's going to like pump their state. He's going to get them in this like really, really fucking excited, and they're all like really excited together, and they might have a really cool experience, but they're going to go home and most of the time their life's just going to go back to roughly the way it was, except for maybe they had a memorable experience at a Tony Robbins event. If all they want is a memorable experience, then I'm certain that he's going to deliver and they're going to get it. However, if what they're looking for is permanent, enduring change, they would get more out of investing the same money in some serious work. So I don't like this inauthenticity, and I don't think the constant need to be positive matches up with real life for most people. And trying to feel like that, even though you don't, is going to make you feel like there's something wrong with you. Like, why can't I just be like all these positive people? And my favorite counterexample that I can think of at the moment, I remember I was once, maybe a couple of years ago, watching a Q&A on YouTube from Jordan Peterson, and someone wrote him in and said something like, I'm so lacking in conscientiousness that I can't even fill out the self-authoring program that you made. What the hell is wrong with me? And Jordan Peterson's response was, well, a lot of things probably, because there's a lot of things wrong with most people. And I loved that because it was so unexpected and so human and so down to earth. Rather than going, oh, there's nothing wrong with you, you've just got a challenge. It's not a problem, it's a challenge. It's like he went, well, you probably are pretty messed up. Everyone is to some degree. And I found that much more relatable.
Well, the problem with the whole Tony Robbins thing is that it's one size fits all. I mean, that's the way it's
Right.
delivered. I mean, I'm of the opinion that companies who bring him in or bring in, his lower tier people, they're looking to not excite everyone. Maybe they're adopting the Pareto principle where, well, if I can just get 20% of my people excited by this and, that can exhibit some change. That's really the only thing that I can think, because, I mean, bringing someone in, on a Friday or a Monday or a Tuesday or something like that to, rally the troops. I mean, I would assume that probably 80% of the people just don't even want to be there.
Right. Yes. What you're looking at is a sales funnel, okay? Certain people who actually have the conscientiousness and intelligence to put the information into practice will do well with this kind of thing. And they are looking for those people. But the thing is, those people are pretty much going to find a way somewhere or another, by hook or by crook, to find the help and the mentorship they need, right? So for ages, I mean, I came in to the world, as we all did, quite naive. Some of us got over our naivety faster than others. But I really believed that if I just put enough knowledge into my head or something like that, that was going to heal me of my woes. And I must have read, 100 self-help books or more. I mean, it was a bloody full-time job trying to sort myself out. That's why I went into my profession. And out of the books that I've read, I would probably only recommend 10. And that's 100 actual self-help books. Add to that tons of new age shit, spirituality, all sorts of stuff that promised to change my life, right? But here's what I didn't realize. A lot of those books are actually business cards. They're not books, right? People are not writing these books to everyone that reads them, because most people don't want a really useful self-help book. They just want something to read on the plane. So if you're out there looking for a really great self-help book, one that is going to change your life, I want you to know that the whole industry doesn't exist for you. It doesn't exist for you. The whole industry exists to get a book that's easy to read into as many hands as possible. So out of the thousands or tens of thousands of people who read them, a few people will be willing to pay 2, 3, 4 grand or more for a long weekend retreat, or $10,000 for a week, or $50,000 to be coached by the author for the entire year. People don't want to be told, if they've got social anxiety, well, you're going to have to go out and speak to 10,000 strangers. And even if you do that, you're occasionally still going to feel anxious around strangers. In fact, sometimes you'll go out and think, what the fuck, I've been practicing this for years and I'm still completely clueless. Because that's what real life is like. That's what really recovering from a wound like social anxiety is for. And you can apply that to literally anything. People don't want to hear that. Lord knows, just apply the example to something else, right? They don't. The vast majority of people don't want to know what it really takes to change their life, and the books are not written with people with giving people practical, applicable. Let me try that again. with the idea of giving people practical steps that they can implement in a systematic fashion. Fuck's sake, Pete. Practical steps that people can implement in a systematic fashion to get better results over time, because that is going to scare them. They just want something to read in the plane. They want to hear some cool stories about some interesting stories that the author is including in the book about people who came to his programs or came to his therapy or her therapy and saw improvements over time and go, oh wow, yeah, I can do that too. You can do it too, but not just by reading the book. So basically, the book is a business card. It's there to sell retreats for the main part.
Do you honestly believe that someone who's suffering can take one of these books, I mean, the best self-help book in the world that has, the greatest advice, and apply it to themselves?
I'm not going to say that there's no, like, the thing is with these books, like, most of it's philosophizing. There's just philosophizing, and they've got some exercises in there, and most people don't do the exercises, the vast majority, because they don't believe that it'll help. They don't believe the exercises will help, and probably in a lot of cases, they might not. If a book is really well written and really helpful, it may actually have techniques in it that you could try in the real world and get more experience. But they will be saying things, things that people don't want to hear, which is like, you will have to try this technique X amount of times, and then you will start to learn from your own experience new ways of being. But yeah, I think what you're saying is someone who's really suffering, is a book going to help them? Probably not going to be enough. I think another massive problem which I'm coming to is the emphasis on information. We're swimming in information, but people buy the false promise that if they put the content of this book into their head, that alone is going to change them. And then people get this addiction to reading the next book, watching the next YouTube video. There is no information that's going to change you that much. It's going to be practical application. The problem that people have is their state. They don't know how to manage their state. They don't know how to engage appropriately with difficult emotions and steer their ship through those difficult emotions. So if they're not conscientious, for example, they don't know how to deal with the negative feelings that confront them when they try and do the things they want to do in their life, and that's why they can't do it. And books don't deal with your states. Books can't answer questions, so they're very limited in their application. I'm sorry, Pete, I'm going to go on a rant here because you're sparking me off big time. One of the reasons why, if you have a good therapist, and I've had horror stories from people who've come to me with therapists, and so I do stress a good therapist, is there's an idea of co-regulation, which is the idea that, when we're small children, when we're babies, when we have intense emotions that are unpleasant, we're in an unregulated state, we're upset or we're angry, we learn to regulate our emotional apparatus by the self-regulation of our caregiver. So mum picks up the baby and holds it to her, and hopefully mum isn't too stressed or de-stressed, and the baby learns from being close to her how to calm itself down. Not everyone received the level of co-regulation they required in the early stages of their life to learn to regulate their own emotional apparatus to the degree they want. Maybe they had a really stressed parent. Maybe a parent died. Maybe their parent was really dysregulated, subject to rages, or found a baby crying stressful, or didn't know how to comfort them when they were in their 2 or 3 years old. There's all sorts of reasons. One of the benefits of sitting down with someone as opposed to reading a book is, if the practitioner is wise, they can regulate themselves, and you get that. And you don't even need to go to a therapist to get that. All of us probably have, I hope all of us have friends that we can go to in times of distress that we've experienced, coming down to earth and being able to make wiser decisions after speaking to them, because they've helped us regulate ourselves just talking. But I think most people have at least had an experience of that, so they know that it exists. And the emphasis of like, yeah, you need to shovel your head. Information is useful. Don't get me wrong. Information can be very useful. But the idea that you're just going to shovel all the information, you're going to assimilate the information from the self-help book or the YouTube videos or the podcast, and that alone is going to change you, I think, is very misleading. And the reason why I feel so incensed about it is they're giving people unrealistic expectations and leading them in the wrong way. And I was one of those people who was led in the wrong way and lost years of my life to this shit.
You called those self-help books a business card.
Yes, I'm talking about the industry broadly speaking. There will be exceptions.
Right. Now, you work one-on-one with people. I mean, is that the way to go? I just don't see any other way. For me, if I'm struggling with something, reading usually isn't going to solve it. It's going to be talking to somebody who can get me through it. So is that book a bad thing? I mean, caveat emptor, all that. But if it does drive someone who is really honestly seeking help, and it causes them to, reach out to that person and they do get the help, then, that's good, right?
Sure. So this is why I need to be careful what I say. A book can be good, but the thing is, my problem is that you cannot see the sun for the clouds. The industry is so full of these flipped off, high profile, in the certain circles, books that are of limited value, that people can't actually find resources that they need. And if they may be in many cases giving people, as I said, sorry to repeat myself, unrealistic expectations of what it takes and what's possible. You also asked me, is seeing people one-to-one the way to go? Well, it certainly helped me, and I certainly see it helping the people that I help. I did at one point have a business coach when I thought I was going into the self-help industry and doing this like larger than life, let's grab life by the balls thing. And again, I found a similar problem, which is I really value what he taught me, the coach, but it didn't actually, and he didn't help me with my state in terms of implementing the stuff that I learned. And I know that's not his job, that's not his expertise. Some people might find that. Some person who is primed to take action would respond well to them. So you need to work with someone that is got the skills that are suitable to your particular situation, your intellectual and emotional needs. Intelligent people find it difficult sometimes to find a suitable therapist. I've had so many people come to me and say, I went to this woman or I went to this guy and they were lovely, but man, I felt like I knew more than the therapist did. That's certainly an option. In terms of the problems that most people face, depression, anxiety, we know a lot about how to reduce these things. The difficulty is actually wanting to do this stuff, right? It's not so much that exercise is an antidepressant. It's that not taking exercise will depress your system, right? This body's designed by nature to move. And so if you were born a few hundred years ago, you'd be doing 10 or 20 times as much physical activity as most people do today. So we know that diet, social interaction and all these things. But what I work with is people's wounds, people's demons, things that happened in people's past that left a mark in their psyche. That's what, through our life, we are all exposed to disappointments, losses, all sorts of things that happen that seem to affect the way that we process information, the way that we process the world. And, a large part of what I'm doing is guiding people into those blocks and working with them through them so that they get some sense of freedom and liberation from the past. And I watch them become more available to life, like more alive, like they can do more of the things they want to do. They've got more optimism. They're more confident in their decision making. They're more excited about their life. And, I started with myself. I am not lazy when it comes to this stuff. Well, to be honest, I don't know if I would not be lazy if I didn't have to. I was suffering a lot in my teens and 20s, but I talk about moving the physical body because I'm the kind of person who didn't take much or any exercise until I hit 30. And I have actually spent months on yoga retreats and things like that, trying to reverse the damage of a sense. Obviously, I'm not overweight or anything like that from anyone who's seen me. But the thing is, I didn't actually realize how uncommonly tight my body was. This is a problem brought forth by our education system as well, and things like that. I've gone to the kind of little dance classes and exercises classes that old age people go to, that get run in the community centre and things like that. Because my body was uncommonly tight and not functional, although I didn't know because, there's no outward signs of it. I wish stuff like that had existed when I was in school. Because if someone had been able to assess you and go, oh yeah, you've got this kind of body and these kinds of problems, so here's a exercise class that will help you get a little bit more confident using your body, and you won't feel so dyspraxic or something like that. Now I go to Lindy Hop dance lessons or a salsa class or something like that to try and get more into my body. This is exactly the opposite from what most people do. If they're not comfortable with their body, they don't use their body. If they're not comfortable in social situations, they don't go into social situations, etc., 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 all down the line. So I've never really been a practical person, very thinky person. So now I've been going to learn some woodwork and things like that. I'm doing the opposite. So when I say that I'm against the self-help industry, kind of more evidence that I'm not against helping self. I'm very for helping self. It's just the way that these things are run at the moment that is a great concern to me.
You mentioned the physical body. You also mentioned diet. What about just keeping yourself mentally fit? It seems to me that when I don't have a chance to read or listen to books at least, or work on the podcast or write or doing something, I fall into malaise. And
right.
And most of the people that I know who at least are constantly reading, constantly creating things like that, they seem to be, now they may deep down have a lot of problems, but they, at least outwardly, I mean, I think if pressed, they would, you'd probably find out that, it's like the people who drive an hour and a half every day one way, so they're in their car 3 hours a day. And, I used to be one of these people who I just listen to music, constantly listen to music, always music playing. And those were some of the days that I was, that period of time, I wasn't happy. I just, I didn't find myself to be happy. But now that I'm constantly reading, constantly listening to something, even if it's just podcasts or something, it's like I don't have time to not be happy. It's like, everything seems to be fine. So yeah, I mean, physical, yes, diet, yes, but keeping yourself mentally sharp too. I think that's as much of it as anything.
I think there's another thing that you touched upon there, which is you've got a sense of purpose in your life. You've got a sense of purpose in your life. You've got this podcast, you've got fans, you're contributing and editing at the Libertarian Institute. You found something to get up for in the morning. And it's really important that people have something that they're working for, especially if they don't like their job or whatever it is, you can always have something that you're moving towards, because there's a fulfillment in pursuing. And I talk about this in my self-help book, Procrastination, Annihilation. Like, people sometimes choose goals that are too big and too out of their comfort zone, and I used to do that, and it really, really got me down. But when I realized that by making the goals smaller and more realistic, I could gain competence. And, as I wrote more essays, say, as I wrote more blogs and got articles published on Mises.org and things like that. Oh, that's good. Instead of just trying to write a book, like, I can start compiling bits from stuff that I've written and put them into and improve on what I've written already. And then now I've got a book. Now I'm writing another book. But I know that the book that I'm writing now was not in my capacity a few years ago. So people also need realistic expectations when it comes to setting goals that are going to help them gain the competence to do what they one day hope to do.
So talk a little bit about a couple of the themes in your book, in your self-help book.
Right, okay. Well, procrastination, annihilation, I guess, is just tools for talking to yourself. Well, that's the first part of it. And the second part of it is an actual regime or a program that people can implement over 3 months to... It's been that long. It's only available on Kindle just now. I'm meaning to bring it on paperback one day, but I am going to revise it for that, which is why it hasn't happened yet. I've not been procrastinating it. I just want to make sure that all the revisions that I want are in there, and I've been prioritizing other things. I've also learned a lot about procrastination since I wrote it, but quite a lot of people have emailed me saying it was genuinely life-changing, at least in one way or another. And I myself am always taken aback, especially it's probably coming up. Yeah, it's over 2 years since I've written it, since I put it out. When it was a long time after, and I remember reading that, and it changed me in this way, and I'm still seeing the influence of it now. I myself got surprised because I'm so skeptical about the power of self-help books to change people, that people were actually saying that they got effects of it. But it's based on my own first-hand experience of being a chronic procrastinator, and not as a person who's completely cured either. But if you look at the stuff that I've put out over the last couple of years, like, I'm impressed myself. Given how much time I still waste, I'm impressed I've managed to put out as much stuff as I do put out. So it's not from this, like, unrealistic place of that I associate with the self-help industry of, like, yeah, we're going to crush it, we're going to take massive action. Because what if you can't? What people need is experiences that generally, like, no one expects to go to the gym one day and be Arnold Schwarzenegger the next day. So Procrastination, Annihilation, the book, is a gem for a person's conscientiousness. It would be worth continuing to read the book as long as they had the problem every now and then, or just like one page every couple of days. But the great thing is, when I put it out, I did a whole bunch of interviews on it. So if people wanted to keep motivated, a lot after they read the book, they could listen to one of those interviews, and every week or so, or to keep the same. It's exactly the same things said in different ways, but we need reminded, because we tend to default to our average mood. So people really need, like, reminded if it's a problem that they've decided that they're going to work on, which, by the way, is another benefit of therapy, because you're going to see your therapist in a week, and you've got that kind of, the road laid out for you. You've been defining your problems in therapy. You figured out what stuff out of all the shit that you could be working on in your life that you want to work on, and you're being reminded to pick up where you left off, but also to keep on focusing on those areas, because there's infinite things we could do. I could go and decide to learn Mandarin tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? If I so decided, there's anything. So if I don't want to talk about about it too much longer because there's tons of content on procrastination and annihilation. But if that is one of the ones you're interested in, if you don't have Kindle, just send me a little message and I'll email you a PDF of it, free of charge. But if that's a problem you're working on, then you make that problem the center of your life for 3 months. Probably not before your kids or anything like that if you have it, but you make it the problem that you're working on in your life for 3 months, and you'll see amazing changes, and many of those changes will be lasting after those 3 months. So you can always go back, next year and do the same thing again that you did with procrastination and annihilation. And if you just want to read it on the plane, I've been told it's a very nice, pleasant read, so it can fulfill that function too.
You just mentioned people can email you. What email would you like them to contact you at?
Antony at beyourselfandloveit.com.
I'll make sure to put that in the show notes, but I just want to remind everybody, Antony spells his name with without an H, so it's A-N-T,
oh, thanks.
Yeah, ANTONY at beyourselfandloveit.com.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And by the way, I should probably mention, just in case someone resonated with my raging against the industry, most of my work is online. I work with people in the States, Australia, New Zealand, all over Europe. So if you like my philosophy, or you think that I might be a good person to help you work through your stuff, you can also email me at Antony at beyourselfandloveit.com. And if you mention that you heard me on Pete's show, I'll do a introductory session with you free of charge, probably somewhere towards the end of the month, so that you can figure out whether we are a match before committing to anything. If that's something interesting to you and you think you've got something that you can work through and would like someone that's good at doing that.
I think something that would be important to address is the fact that, most of the libertarians, the anarchists I know, they're just skeptical of things like this. And, self-help, I would assume most are skeptical of self-help or anything like that. So is there any way you can, with all you've said and everything, is there any way that you can ease their minds that, like, I guess saying, there's no guarantees in life, you can only try.
When it comes to what exactly?
Well, if they want to contact, if they wanted to, if they're going through problems right now,
yeah.
And even if they don't want to talk to you, but they want to talk to somebody else, but they're
Sure.
just completely skeptical about it, help them, try to understand that you can get help.
You can. And my best advice is you have to have an experience of it, because you don't know if it's going to be able to help you or not until you've seen it. And if you don't think, say, for example, that I was for you, but you'd like to see someone in person, someone local, and you have those skepticisms about it, just speak to me about that. Like, it doesn't need to be on Skype or anything like that, just Facebook Messenger and stuff like that. And maybe I can talk to you and maybe give you some tips. And cause some people just want to see someone that they can sit across from and wouldn't like to do it online. I'd be happy to advise. To ease your mind, well, you never know whose office you're going to walk into. It's good if someone has testimonials from people that they've helped. Even better still, I guess this would probably be more applicable to coaches than therapists because of confidentiality and all that. If they've got people who are champions, of them who say their work's good, if you know someone who's gone to someone who they got great results from, that's a good indication as well. It's not an easy question to answer, to be honest, in a world with so many false roads to go down to. The only thing is, I think if you're skeptical enough to worry about it, you're probably skeptical enough to tell someone who's got a good approach that's suitable for you from someone who's maybe not at your level and maybe is more suited to other people.
You know, just an anecdote from my life is I've read self-help books. I've read tons of books about improving your situation. So I think really the only book that I read that I actually got anything out of was How to Win Friends and Influence People. Because
yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, because it's logic. I mean, it's very logical, and it really, you really get to understand human nature a lot better after you read that book. And that's what I got out of it. It was just an understanding of my own nature, and the nature of people, everyone else. But
right.
I think one of the things, I grew up in and around people who were salesmen, and they were very accomplished, and I'm just wasn't. You know, I tried it a bunch of times and I just wasn't comfortable with it. And I did a 2-day sales course with this guy who was like the real estate sales king of Los Angeles and everything. I don't even remember what the hell his name was. I think his first name was Tom. This was a long time ago. And it was 12 hours one day, and then you had to be back. You had to study stuff overnight and then be back early in the morning. I mean, so you basically didn't sleep and everything. And just learning basic sales techniques, that probably helped me more than anything. Because
oh, no way. No question. I mean, that sounds so awesome.
Being able to ask people questions and being able to, genuinely, and this guy was like one of the nicest people I ever met. He wasn't like, hey, let's get rich. It's like, just really asking questions to get to know what people need and what they want.
Right.
And then you can, provide it for them.
And I love that you had that experience, and I have to admit I'm slightly envious. Like, I would love to go on that program. I would love it. This is the kind of thing that's missing. People need mentorship, and we don't have a culture of mentorship anymore. As many, good, wonderful things that we have with technology and things like that, it makes people think that a laptop with a YouTube video or a book alone can replace having someone to walk you through the process and respond to your needs and show you how it's done, but then show you how you can do it. And I think you've just given a perfect example of how that's done.
Well, yeah, and also, this was one of those things where there was 200-300 people there. So, but I was right from the start going up to the guy when we were taking breaks and just talking to him and everything. I was like, I'm going to get some personal interaction here because I really think that's the way I'm going to learn. And, I wasn't alone in that, but most of the people didn't want any kind of personal interaction. Maybe some of the people who were there because they had to be there. Their company wanted them there and everything. I was actually there because I wanted to be there. And it was a lot of fun. It sounded like I was going to hate it when I did it, but just knowing that this person wasn't, getting to know that he wasn't a total scumbag who was like, hey, I'm going to teach you how to make more money than you can make in your whole life. No, he was like, I'm just going to teach you ways to build relationships with people, and, that's a big part. Anybody who knows anything about real estate sales that's a huge part of real estate sales. And, I think that's why I picked that one too, because, he just seemed like the nicest guy when I was looking for something like that.
Yeah, and I guess that's an advert for first-hand experience. I mean, I went to all sorts of self-help retreats and things like that in my 20s. Some of them were just like weekend things and seminars. And I had good experiences and I met lovely people at them. But none of them really changed me because they were just a little bit abstract, I suppose. And what I found, in my 30s is just doing so much stuff that I wish I'd just done in my 20s, just practical things to make you feel like you're a competent person in the world. whatever that is. The great thing about learning a skill is that when you learn a skill, especially one that you didn't think you could, and you don't have to be great at it. I always say to my friends that I'm doing, that friend that's teaching me woodwork, and people, like, one thing I do here, the reason why social anxieties come up is I do a weekly workshop called How to Make Small Talk for people, some people with social anxiety, but some other people who just like, oh, I've always hated small talk. They just don't know what to say in social situations. And we have games, we play games together that help people learn new ways to communicate. But one of the things is just loosening up and loosening up their mind and finding ways to talk about little things in interesting ways, right? These are all skills that I struggled with earlier on in life, which is why I'm teaching them. And it's the same with anything I do, whether it's making small talk or learning woodwork or going to that salsa class last night, which was really fucking hard. It's like, I just want to get slightly less shit. That's always my philosophy for taking anything on. And I always say that to my friends, and it always provokes a laugh. It's like, if I can get slightly less shit at this activity today, then that's going to be an achievement. And that's such a greater mindset than kind of like the mindset that I had growing up, or maybe that was even inculcated in me in school. Like, there's no point of doing anything unless you're going to do it professionally, and more to the point, like, if you make a mistake, like, that's bad. In fact, we're going to put red crosses all over your work beside every time you make a mistake. So I'm just sharing this wisdom because it was hard won. And one piece of information that might actually prove helpful is whenever you're trying to do something that's out of your comfort zone, just say, I don't have to be perfect at this. If I can get slightly less shit today, that would be pretty good. Because getting slightly less shit every day or every few days at something over a period of time makes for pretty good results.
I think the one thing I look at is it would be impossible for me to really try to give people advice unless I actually knew them. It knew what they were going through, and
right.
And there would have to be something really personal there. People contact me all the time. It's like, I'm starting a podcast. What do you think? And everything. And I'm just like, I'm starting. This is the subject. And my first question to them is, how many episodes do you think you have on that subject? Do you have 388 like I do? And that usually makes them start thinking. Things like that. But if somebody contacted me about, I'm going through this and everything like that, I think it's really, a book isn't going to help with that, because everybody's a different individual. I mean, we have to think like, an Austrian economist now. We're not thinking about, the whole mass of people. We're thinking about the individual. And really, you're going to have to know everything that person's going through. And, no two human beings is alike. So that's the problem I have with most of those books is they're selling a one size fits all.
That's right.
To individuals, and I would assume that's probably, a big part of the problem that libertarians might have with the self-help industry or books like that.
Yeah, you're bringing out really important strands here, and it's pretty ignorant to even offer someone advice without knowing their problem inside out. I guess when someone goes in a book, you're not offering them advice. But I say that to lead into, like, one of the things that you might expect if you go to a therapist, if you've not been one to before, which is really, really important, is that the point of someone asking you questions and prompting you to speak so that you feel understood is really not just a skill for therapists, but it's really a prerequisite of, like, you might have experienced someone sometime trying to give someone advice, being like, that person, they never take advice, they just go off and do what they want anyway. It's so annoying when they complain about their problems. Or similarly, you might have experienced someone giving you advice when you weren't actually ready, and you feel this like deep frustration because what you're actually seeking after is understanding. And I think that that's one of the
That's what parents do. And that's a lot of the problem that I think people have
that's
with
why people don't get on with it.
With their parents is because, that's exactly what they do.
Yeah, they just give you advice without actually trying to understand you first. The lovely thing about therapy, if you get a good therapist, is they will make you feel like talking. They will demonstrate their understanding of what you've just said in a way that makes you go, oh yeah, that is it, that's so true. And when you feel like someone really understands you that way, you want to talk more. You realize things that were on the edge of your awareness that you kind of had a sense of, and sometimes you might go, oh yeah, that's what it's like it was on the tip of your tongue. That's what I was trying to understand about myself. It's just there on the edge of your awareness. If they're a good therapist, they'll bring it into the center of your awareness. Oh, right, now that I understand that bit, I can go deeper. And it's not, therapy is really not about giving advice, although, occasionally there is a place for that. Like, as a practitioner, if I know something that's going to help someone, I don't keep it to myself. I will share it, but it's always shared tentatively as a suggestion that someone can go, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea, or oh no, I wouldn't do that because blah blah blah. Okay, fine. There should never be any pressure in that situation. Just for anyone who's not been but wanted the process demystified a little bit, those are a couple of things about it. If something was to be offered, I would say from the therapist's experience, it should be done at a point where you as a client have come to the point where, wow, yeah, I feel like really understood, and you're not gushing to speak. Like, a lot of the time I see it as, if a thought comes up when my client's speaking, I just put a pin in it and put it over to the side, and I figure, see if that is still relevant at some juncture of the conversation where it might be appropriate, then I'll take the pin out of it and share it. A lot of the time it's not even necessary. It was just a fleeting thought that seemed like it might be useful at the time. If we all had that ability, which I'm really thankful that I learned from my work, I think a lot of us would get on a lot better. Just put a pin in it and see if it's still relevant when the other person finishes speaking.
Just listening to people. I think that's what have I heard people say? People listen to people so that they can know what to say next, instead of listening to people to understand what they're saying.
Right. You have listened to me exceedingly well tonight, and it has been very therapeutic, I should add. But I just add something to that. Listening is one thing. If you would like to develop a really useful skill, a great skill is very simply to learn to paraphrase or to summarize what other people say after they said it. Like, and especially if someone's upset or distressed, if you can angry in any way, if you can basically demonstrate that you've understood what they've said, just watch what happens. People come to life. They want to speak to you more. They go, yeah, exactly. And it doesn't even need to be a negative emotion either. I remember someone, I used to teach piano before I was a therapist, and once a kid came over and he was talking to me about having gone to ice skating at the weekend, and all I said was, wow, you really love ice skating. And he went, yeah, he came to life and he wanted to talk about it more. That's even shorter than paraphrasing. That was just like taking the gist of what he just communicated to me and reflecting it back to him. This is a superhero power, by the way.
Well, it's what's basically the message of how to win friends and influence people.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is seek to understand, then be understood. That's a nice maxim, but it actually gives you a method for doing it. So there's first listening. Listen with the intent to understand what the other person is saying, and then demonstrate your understanding. That's kind of like the next step. And you can be pretty clumsy about it. People will It is something that you can get quite skillful at, but people will cut you a lot of slack if you're clumsy with it in most cases, because at least you're showing that you're trying to understand what they're saying. Don't mind if they correct you. That's still helpful. Like sometimes I will make a reflection like that. Someone will be talking and I'll summarize it and they'll go, no, it's not exactly that. It's more like this. And I'm like, all right, okay, cool. You try again. That's good, because even if you get it wrong, you help them get it right. If I say, wow, you sound really angry about that, and it's like, it's not that I'm angry actually, I just feel really disappointed. Well, me kind of saying, you sounded angry helped you figure out exactly what you did feel about it.
Something that I came to realize a bunch of years ago, and really not that long ago, was that communication and miscommunication or lack of communication is responsible for so many of the ills of the world. It's just,
Right.
And a big part of that is just listening and understanding exactly what someone's trying to communicate. So, well, let's wrap it there. And why don't you plug anything you want to plug?
Okay, well, sure. I think because I already made a plug, we'll just circle back to that. If you want a PDF of Procrastination Annihilation, email me Antony@beyourselfandloveit.com. You can also get me on Facebook, and I do have a podcast, Be Yourself and Love It podcast, which you might be interested in. It's a self-help podcast, funnily enough, but I do try and put the emphasis on practical application and providing tools that you could actually use. There's maybe a 16 or 18 part series of like 10, 15-minute podcasts to help on how to make small talk. There's a bunch of stuff on procrastination. There's lots of stuff on improving communication skills to overcome conflicts. It's very interesting watching. You mentioned a lot of problems come down to poor communication. I cannot agree more. It's really interesting watching movies and media and plays. I like going out to the theatre. When you understand some of these communication skills, like the paraphrasing thing and demonstrating understanding, and see how much of the conflict in media is about characters not actually taking the time to understand and see where each other were coming from, and if they did, they would be able to get on, but then we wouldn't have a cool movie to watch. So it's interesting, the drama of play. So Antony at Be Yourself and Love It. Fuck, man. Antony at BeYourselfAndLoveIt.com. Thank you so much for having me again, Pete. I always love doing your show. We always have a great chat.
Yeah, and we had a pretty good time in New York too, didn't we?
Oh yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, we had a really great time hanging out. Did we? So was the last podcast we did before or after that?
It was before that. We were going to do one after.
All right.
We were going to do one after that, but Tom wanted to have you on, and I
right.
I defer.
Okay, cool. Okay, because I thought the last one we did was after, but yeah, just for anyone who didn't know, there's a great picture of Pete and I sipping whiskey. I was very touched that you came to New York to see the debate, and I'm glad that we got to hang out quite a few times. It was a very, very special opportunity to meet you and hang out in Gene Epstein's apartment, sipping whiskey.
Hisako's apartment.
Hisako's apartment, right? Yeah, Gene's wife, Hisako. It was properly surreal. I felt like I was in after Ayn Rand wrote Atlas Shrugged, she had her little collective of people that used to meet weekly in an apartment in New York at the weekends, which she called the Collective. I felt like I was part of something like that. It was properly surreal.
Oh, we had
really great.
Yeah, we had great conversations about everything from, and a lot of them just didn't go into libertarianism at all, or movies and all that, and just arguing with your friend about how the Godfather was actually a good movie.
Yeah, that would stick out for me as well. We were talking about the Godfather and Our mutual love for 80s goth music, I think, was one of the things we both got out to see Sisters of Mercy and Bauhaus and all these bands that very few people know anymore. Really cool.
Who? What are these bands? I've never heard of these people.
I was a goth in my late teens and early 20s.
All right, man, I'm gonna get out of here. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.